Okay, people, I'm reacting to AI search. Was a video of about the DNA address, AI pages, and new coin and new address about AI news. You know what to do? Let's see. Let's pick up the speed. It's 47 minutes long.
AI never sleeps, and this week
It
has been
doesn't,
absolutely insane.
because it can be on as long as you have electricity.
We have an open source unified
Or
model that
the
can generate and
hardware
edit images and videos.
works.
This AI can generate interactive games with NPCs. In other words, you can prompt it on how other non-player characters behave. We have a new open source image generator that works directly in pixel space.
Yes,
this can
it
even
is.
generate 8K resolution images. Alibaba
So basically, it's just basically pick a generator of images and it will be excellent work.
drops their latest Quen model, and it's a beast. This AI
It's basically the best, almost everything best outside of core, batch, and repo.
allows you to control videos precisely with references. We have a tiny open source model for generating and editing DNA. This AI
This means that you can basically create theoretically diseases or basically cures for diseases, so this can be useful for in
can
medicine
take a floor plan
creation.
and generate a full consistent 3D environment of all the rooms. Chinese
Right.
food delivery company releases their latest and very realistic avatar generator. We have a new top transcription tool which works extremely well for real-life messy audio.
Really?
We have a new open source humanoid robot which you can just build at home, and a lot more. So let's jump right in. First up, ByteDance releases a really powerful multimodal model. It's called Lance, and this is just a 3 billion parameter unified multimodal model for both images and videos. This can do text to video. In other words, it can take your prompt and turn it into a video. Now, the video quality isn't great, but this isn't meant
It isn't really that great.
to be state-of-the-art for just video generation. This can also edit existing videos. So for
So
example,
basically it can edit existing videos, so it can basically generate or basically replace background
we
images.
can replace the
which
background
can
with fire
put a
like
stack.
this, or we can add a row of colorful balloons, or change the car into red, or change the art style. This is basically like
Yeah.
Nano Banana, but for video. So with this feature, you can then edit videos sequentially using multiple turns. For example, we can first make her hair longer and curly, and then we can add a floral headband to her head, and then we can change the background, and then also get her to raise one hand slowly. Now, because this is just a unified multimodal model, it's really good at also
Yes.
visual understanding. For example, we can plug in these images of mazes,
And it can basically able to realize where to go with
and it
mazes.
can easily generate a video of it solving the maze. Pretty impressive. And again, because this is a unified model, it also has like world and text understanding built in. So you can input a video and ask it things about the video, and it can answer it correctly. So here are some examples of this in action. And in addition
Yes.
to just generating videos and understanding videos, this can also just do text to image. Here are
This
some
can
example
be
generations.
impressive.
This can handle various art styles like anime, watercolor, cyberpunk, and of course realistic photos
As well as behaviors of basically drawing
well.
styles.
And of course, it can also edit images just like Nano Banana. So here
Right.
are some examples for your reference. You can just take an input image and prompt it semantically to edit it however you want. Or you can also combine an image with a different art style, and here's what you get. Or you can also combine two objects in different images together like this. Or here are some
Right.
other examples of combining multiple reference objects into the same photo. It's able to keep the overall consistency of the reference photos quite well. And as you may expect, this can also analyze and understand images. For example,
Yes,
you can
it-
feed it images with texts and charts and graphs and ask it questions, and it's able to answer all this very well. So overall, a very impressive and capable model. The awesome thing is they've already released the code to this, so if you click on this code button and you scroll down a bit, here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. However,
Yes.
note that here it says you do need a GPU with at least 40 gigabytes of
Also for interface, basically you need this server.
RAM to run this. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this page in the description below. Also this week, Apple releases
Yes.
a new 3D model generator called Litho, which stands for Surface Light Field Tokenization. So this can take an input image and render a complete 3D model from it. And here's the key idea. Instead of only reconstructing the shape of the 3D object, Litho tries to capture how the object actually looks from different viewpoints. This
Yes.
matters because real objects don't all look the same from every angle, especially for shiny objects or reflections, surface details, and lighting all change as you move around. So Litho is designed for 3D reconstruction, where the output is not just a rough object, but a more faithful 3D representation
Yes,
that's
it
view
gets
dependent.
pretty good.
Now, if you compare Litho against Trellis, which is another leading 3D model generator, then you can see that, on average, Litho is more accurate and faithful. So think of Litho as a 3D model generator that can also preserve the way it visually behaves when you inspect it from different angles. If you
Right.
scroll up to the top of the page, they have released the code to this, and if you scroll down a bit here, it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. They also include the script on how to train this yourself. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in
So
the description
basically
below.
the
Also,
creation of models.
so this week we have a really cool system called Flash GRPO. So this is about aligning video models so that the quality looks a lot better according to human preferences. The
So
problem is
it's
doing this
better.
on a large video model that consists of billions of parameters can take hundreds of GPU
And it basically takes a lot of training
days of
details.
training per experiment,
Yes.
which is pretty brutal. I'll go over the technical details in a second, but first of all, here are some results. So after plugging this through Flash GRPO, you can see how a video with the same prompt looks way better than just the baseline. Or here's
Yes, it
another
does
example
better.
with the same prompt, and you can see the generation after Flash GRPO just looks way better. Here are some
Yes, it
additional
is. It looks
comparisons for
better.
reference, comparing the baseline model with this new Flash GRPO, and as you can see, for all instances, Flash GRPO just looks way better. It has a lot
Yes,
more
it
detail,
is.
it looks a lot more realistic,
And it looks
and the physics and motion
movement.
are more accurate. Alright, so here's how how it works. Basically, instead of optimizing across the full diffusion trajectory every time, it samples only a single time step in a much smarter way, while keeping the reward signal meaningful. It has two main tricks. So the first one is called isotemporal grouping, which makes sure comparisons are fair by grouping rollouts at same sampled time step. The second method is called temporal gradient rectification, which basically helps stop training from being distorted. Now, if you compare this to another alignment method called flow GRPO fast, you can see that flash GRPO, which is the blue line, is able to learn and improve way faster. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they have released a GitHub repo, and here it contains the code on how you can run and train this yourself locally. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this project is really interesting. It's called Reactive GWM, and this is what they call a reactive game world model, where NPCs are not just background pixels anymore. They can actually be steered via high-level strategies. So imagine a Street Fighter-style world model where the player is controlled with normal button inputs, but the opponent can be told to play offense or defense or any other strategy. That's the key idea. The model separates the player actions from NPC strategies, which are injected through cross-attention. Note that this entire thing is just a video that's generated from an AI model. This is not a pre-designed game. But the cool thing is, not only can you press the arrow keys and attack buttons for the user, but you can also prompt how the NPC, in other words the opponent, responds and how it attacks as well. In simple terms, one pathway handles what buttons did the player press, and another pathway handles what kind of behavior the NPC should follow.
And basically what sort of attacks is capable of that NPC is doing. So basically even it's effectively generating the AI or responses.
And then it merges both of these together when generating the video. And this points towards more controllable game simulation where you can actually direct other characters and elements in the world.
And you can just use it to also to create so for an example a video or a film.
Concept. The awesome thing is, at the top of the page they have released the GitHub to this, and if you scroll down a bit, here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Note that this does use WAN 2.2 as the base video model, but this is pretty lightweight. You should be able to run this on most mid to high-end GPUs. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, we have a very interesting image model called L2P. They took one of the leading image models out there, Z-Image, and spiced it up by removing the VAE and latent space. Now, if you're not familiar with these terms, basically how traditional diffusion...
It basically uses encoder and latent space, and basically it just it was basically taking into data, and basically it took way too much processing power.
Is they generate images in a compressed dimension called latent space. This enables them to compute and create the image a lot more efficiently. Then it converts the latent image back into pixel space, which you and I can see using something called a VAE. The advantage of this is it's more efficient and uses less compute. However, because it's not working directly in pixel space, you might get some loss in quality and detail and accuracy. Now, what the team did here is they completely got rid of this VAE and latent space step. This L2P model can generate images directly in pixel space. So here are some examples for your reference. You can see that this is a super performant model that can handle a variety of different art styles, including realistic images and different text and elements in images. Plus, this can handle up to 4K resolution or even 8K extrapolation. This can generate very high quality images because it's in pixel space. Now, according to these benchmarks, you can see that this is the most performant pixel-based diffusion model so
far overall, but in certain global things like CDRAM is better. And entity seems to be better there, and attribute.
And the quality of L2P even beats some other open source latent models out there like Qwen and Z-Image Turbo. The awesome thing is this is out already, so if you click on this code button, it takes you to this page, and if you scroll down a bit, here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Plus, they also released the training script to this, so you can fine-tune it. Note that currently they've only released the model that can generate 1K resolution images, the model that can...
and what it can do 4K and 8K and even 10K ultra high resolution generation, it can be quite
higher resolution images is still pending. Note that this 1K model is currently around 20 gigabytes in size, so you'll need a mid to high-end GPU to run this. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, we have a new open source foundation AI model for DNA called Carbon. So here's how it works. Instead of reading normal language like ChatGPT, this model reads the language of life itself. You see, DNA is just made of these 4 letters, GCAT. So you can also train a language model to understand the grammar of DNA, just like how it would understand the grammar of natural language. And the crazy part is that this one can process almost 400,000 DNA base pairs at once, which is an enormous amount of biological context for a model like this. The model sees massive strings of DNA letters, and it has to figure out the patterns on its own. Basically,
and how it basically correlates, and whether any of you have basically a lot of DNAs, basically repositories, you can check it, and whether or not it's anomalous.
The rules of genetics by predicting what DNA comes next. The same way that language models predict the next word in a sentence. You can enter a DNA string, and whether or not it will continue
some sort of the genetic disease,
or score genetic variants, or even predict a protein's 3D structure. So instead of treating DNA as just letters in a database, this turns it into something a model can reason over and generate from. The most interesting claim around Carbon is speed. Here, they claim this is the fastest open source foundation model for DNA. And on this chart, they say it's like 275 times faster than...
This is basically Evo 2 was fast, but and they had a lot of throughput, but and they achieved 20 billion per
The
hour.
medium version of Evo 2. This is fast enough to process the entire human genome on a
Yep.
single GPU in under 2 days, which is pretty crazy. Now, the
Yes.
larger version of Evo 2 still has the highest win rate. This is the most performant. In fact, I already did a full explainer video on Evo 2,
Yes,
so
it's
see this
kinda-
video if you want to learn more. Anyways, this is a super fast and lightweight model for processing
Yeah,
DNA.
yes, it's super fast, but it still needs to increase
This could make
accuracy.
DNA modeling workflows way more accessible, especially for tasks like sequence completion
But
or
the only thing that needs to be basically is improving to the level of
connecting
virtual.
genetic sequences to protein structures. And the awesome thing is this is small enough to run on just a single GPU. Now, if you click on this code button, it takes you to this GitHub, which contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Note that the largest 8 billion parameter model is only 16.5 gigabytes in size, whereas the smallest one, which is 500 million
Yes.
parameters, this is quite tiny at only 1 gigabyte in size. Plus, they
Yes,
also
yeah.
released GGUF versions of this. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, Chinese food delivery company Meituan continues to cook. So they just released their latest avatar generator called Longcat Video Avatar 1.5. Now, they
Yes.
released version 1 a few weeks ago, but this new version is built to be more stable and expressive for talking avatars. So it's really
Yes,
simple.
it
You just
can
need to
be-
input a reference image of the person plus some audio, and it'll get that person to speak
Speak whatever you want, and then it's basically just quite interesting, and effectively you can just basically make it as effectively to the fake recording.
out that audio in a really natural way. Here are some examples.
So the next day I picked her up early from school and I took her to Sally's Sour Cream and we had lunch together. And it was special because we could never go there as a family because Sam hated
With his dad being in the prison, that's kind of, it could go either way. It worries me that there is a potential kind of power base there between the two of them, which
Point.
I don't think Haynes likes. He's very happy with the power base.
Qualified. I was in contention. What is he now? He's a stupid little know nothing, not knower.
And he was sent back here to do some research on film stock. And then he got the call and said, it's over. No money.
Get a bell! And
Yes,
sometimes I'd
this
be out
is
in
no
the alley
money.
in winter, and she'd see me without a hat, and she'd yell, "Get out!"
That's very
Now,
much
this doesn't
good.
have to be realistic people. This can
There's
also
a
do
people-
different art styles and animations like this.
Probably because I've been on my own my whole life. It's not an excuse. It's just
Yes.
it's why, instead of telling you that you're the best thing that ever happened to me, I make jokes about
They
yours.
make jokes.
And I tell you that you try too hard. When, you know, the truth is I just don't want you to get hurt because
No,
no one else in the world matters more to me
no.
than you do.
Oh, pretty
This can
romantic.
also do multi-person interaction, so you can have multiple voices in your audio clip.
dislodge a juror who is violating the judge's rules or the judge's orders. Well, then you run the risk of looking like you're taking out, you're cherry picking jurors so that you can get the ruling that you want. The actual
Yes.
bond company may not be qualified to give him that bond. So what happened here?
So basically, what happened there?
Yeah, not so fast, Donald. It looks like AG Tish.
If you're interested in trying this out, the awesome thing is they've released the models to this already. So if you
Yes,
click on this
so
code button and you scroll down a bit, here it
So this is the reason how the way how to install it.
contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on
And
your
then
computer. The total size of the int 8 version
It's basically 16 gigs, and you just basically just can download.
is 16 gigabytes, so you should be able to fit this with a mid to high end GPU.
Yes,
If you're interested
it
in
can
reading
do.
further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, we
Right.
have a very powerful transcription tool called Mega ASR. This is a speech recognition model built for messy real-world audio, not just clean clips. So this can take speech that may be buried under noise, echo, reverb, clipping, bad microphones, and other stuff, and tries to transcribe the audio correctly. Here are some examples. On the left is
Yes.
the ground truth, and this blue column is the transcription from Mega ASR.
Zany.
Right, so a super noisy environment, you can barely hear what the woman says, and that's the challenge of these audio clips. It's really hard to get
Yes.
traditional transcription models like Gemini 3 Pro or Qwen 3 ASR to transcribe this. The error rate of both of these are huge, but for Mega ASR, it's actually able to get most of this correct. Here's another example.
Yes.
And again, you can hear that Mega ASR has the lowest error rate, and it got most of the text correct, whereas for both
So
the other competitors, it was pretty bad. Here are
It was pretty bad.
some additional extremely challenging examples.
Friendly game, let's just set a timer to score crash.
Among experts on computer papers,
Among
So if you need to transcribe some really messy real-world audio, this new Mega ASR is by far the best model to use. Now, the team trained it on 2.6 million samples across 7 core acoustic problems, including noise, far field, obstructed, echo and reverb, electronic distortion, dropout, etc. Now, after training the model on all this data, you can see that it's a lot more performance compared to other transcription models. It
because it is being basically specially trained.
gains of nearly 30% over leading open and closed models in difficult
This
acoustic
is
environments.
quite
This is useful because
impressive.
speech recognition is usually pretty good in clean demos, but they kind of suck when you give it real messy audio. And Mega ASR is focused on exactly that part. If you scroll up to the top of the page, the awesome thing is they've released this already. So if you click on this code button and you scroll down a bit, here it contains all the instructions instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Plus, they also released the script on how you can fine-tune this yourself. Note that the total size of everything is quite tiny at less than 5 gigabytes, so you should be able to run this on like most consumer GPUs. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, Tencent open-sourced a family of multilingual translation models called HYMT2. So the biggest
basically translation models.
model is 30 billion parameters, and this is a mixture of experts models, so when you use it, only 3 billion parameters are active, making it very efficient. They also have a smaller 1.8 billion variant and a 7 billion parameter variant. This is able to take text in one language and output it in another language. But the important part is it's designed to follow detailed translation instructions. So instead of just saying translate this to English, you can get to preserve the formatting, or follow a specific style, or use the right terminology, or keep delimiters in the right place, or translate only visible user-facing text inside structured data. This matters because real translation work is messy. Companies are not translating just simple sentences. They're usually translating product pages or
are basically as well with pages, and so they need to basically translate everything outside of the inside of the
subtitles, app strings, documents, JSON files, and business terms where one wrong placeholder or formatting mistake can break the output. So this is trained to do really well at preserving the original output and listening to your desired format. Now this family of models supports translation across 33 languages, including all of these different languages. If you look at these benchmark scores, then you can see that this new HYMT2 family is very impressive. In terms of instruction following, it even beats other open source models like DeepSeek V4, which is way larger. Same with this benchmark, which evaluates translation across different specialized domains like finance, law, medical, tech, and politics. You can see that on average,
is pretty better.
Again, this new HYMT2 family outperforms the other open models, some of which are like dozens of times larger. So very impressive. Now they released this already, so on this page it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. The full 30 billion parameter version is quite large at 60 gigabytes in size, whereas the smallest 1.8 billion parameter version is
just for 4 gigabytes
only 4 gigabytes in size. So this can fit in most consumer GPUs. They also released the FE8 and GGUF versions of this. So if you need a lightweight translation model, especially for specialized domains, or if you need some very specific formatting, this is currently one of the best models to use. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. If you want to supercharge your content and marketing pipeline, definitely check out Higgsfield, the sponsor of this video. They just launched Higgsfield Supercomputer, which you can think of as Claude but for content creation, images, and compliance-ready assets. Supercomputer connects models like Cdance, VO, Kling, Soul, and others inside one creator-first workspace to handle the entire creative flywheel. Try Higgsfield Supercomputer using the link in the description below. Also, this week, Google held their biggest annual event, Google I.
And that everyone can just create
with some big announcements. Now, I already covered it in this video, so see this if you want to learn more. But in addition, what I think is even more impactful is this. So Google DeepMind just revealed something called the AI co-scientist. This is one of the nice examples of AI moving beyond just simple chatbots to actual research collaboration. In fact,
so basically, they can just research for you and discover new stuff or analyze
published a paper in Nature about this. So it's pretty legit. Basically, this is a multi-agent AI system designed to help scientists generate ideas, review evidence, propose experiments, and speed up scientific discovery. So instead of just asking a model a question and getting one answer back, this uses a team of agents that debate with each other, critique ideas, refine hypotheses, and work more like an actual research group. Think of it like giving researchers a room full of specialized AI scientists that constantly brainstorm and challenge each other. The really important part is it's not meant to replace scientists. It's designed to act more like a research partner that helps people move faster and explore more possibilities. Researchers can give a goal or a scientific problem, and then the system starts generating hypotheses, searching through literature, identifying gaps, and proposing experiments. In other words, it helps narrow down which ideas are worth testing in the real world. DeepMind showed examples in areas like drug discovery and biomedical research, for example, finding new medicines for liver fibrosis. So this ain't just summarizing papers or answering simple questions, it's actively helping generate new scientific directions. It uses multiple specialized agents instead of one monolithic model. And the system kind of self-improves its reasoning through
through the day
systems like this.
So basically, it can just improve through reasoning, and so will be able to
scientists filter through huge amounts of information and focus on the most promising ideas, as well as come up with new directions they haven't thought of before. If this works well in practice, it could seriously change how research gets done across medicine, biology, chemistry, and beyond. If you're interested,
so basically, it can be used everywhere.
Further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, we have a really tiny video language model called Marlin 2B. This is built for a very practical job, which is extracting structured information from videos. It answers two questions most people care about in videos: what happened and when did it happen? So, for example, you can give it a video and it can produce a scene description plus timestamped events. Or you can also feed it a video and ask it when a certain event occurs. For example, here, if we search for a gunfight event, it's able to predict exactly where that event happened in the video. And this includes
even how long it took.
And files. This is extremely useful for video search or moderation, editing, surveillance review, dataset labeling, or any other workflow where you need to turn video into structured data. So this model is only 2 billion parameters, and this is based off of Qwen 3.52b. I really love the medium-sized family of Qwen. It's just so versatile, and you can do so many different things with it. Here they say that Marlin is the strongest open video VLM in its weight class. In terms of like captioning benchmarks, for example, you can see that Marlin is all the way up here, even though it's only 2 billion parameters. This performs as well as the closed Gemini
2.5 Flash, and even though that's closed source
2.5 Flash, which is way larger. So if you need a small open model for analyzing events in videos that can run locally on your computer, this is currently the best option you can use. Now on the same page, if you scroll down a bit, here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Note that the total size of everything is less than 6 gigabytes, so you should be able to fit this on even low-end GPUs. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, Alibaba continues to cook. So they just released Qwen 3.7, which is their latest variant of Qwen. Specifically, they released
Qwen 3.7 model, so it's basically the best proprietary
Qwen 3.7 Max, and this is aimed to be much better at agentic capabilities. The main idea is that model isn't just designed to answer simple questions, but to actually help with multi-step work, especially for coding or agentic tasks. The kind of task
it basically can just do various subtext and create agentic
where the model needs to plan, check results, and keep iterating. This can be plugged into the most popular agent platforms like Claude Code or OpenClaw or Hermes. And here's an example where we can get it to analyze a ton of financial news and documents and provide investment strategies. And as you can see, it's able to go through and digest a ton of different documents and assets, and then synthesize and analyze everything, and then output some very thorough, high-quality deliverables.
This is pretty good for financial
The thing
people.
is, this also has vision capabilities, so this can analyze images and video. For example, you can plug Qwen 3.7 into this robot dog and get it to analyze the camera in real time to decide how to navigate across this environment. So you can also embed Qwen 3.7 into the brain of robots. And if you look at these performance benchmarks, especially in terms of agentic coding and reasoning, you can see that Qwen 3.7 is on par with some of the top open models out there, including DeepSeek V4 plus GLM 500.
It's basically pretty good and pretty much beats almost everyone, or is a top tier. That everyone from various
One and Kimi K2.6. Now, currently this is available via Alibaba's Cloud Model Studio and via API, so it's not open source.
It's OpenAI and Cloud Model Service.
Yet. But Alibaba does have a history of open sourcing their Qwen models, so I'm hopeful that they will open source.
So basically, it might become open source enough
This in the future as well. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. And they're not done cooking, so they also released Qwen 3.5 Live Translate this week. As the name implies, this is a real-time translation model, but what makes it different is it doesn't just take in and listen to speech. This also
So basically, it's just doing effectively in real time.
uses visual context. So instead of only hearing words and translating them, it can see what's happening and use that extra context to produce a better translation. Here are some examples.
So it can actually even see you using video, and so it can just do better translation based upon that.
Examples of it
That's
in
very
action.
impressive.
我刚刚试了一下这个 Cruise 3.5 Live Translate。
The speech-to-text translation actually supports 60 languages. Elle permet également la traduction de la parole à la parole dans 29 langues. Par rapport à la génération précédente, c'est une amélioration considérable.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
是的，我也注意到了，翻译出现的太快了。
Impressive cool.
What I'm saying in
就像模型实时准确地理解我在说什么一
It's
样。
impressive. It's basically almost real-time communication.
Stratégie de traduction d'unité lisible.
Its readable unit translation strategy is impressive. Even before I finished my sentence, it had already started translating.
So basically, it can read context, but it can just depend upon
For example, where we can get to analyze this e-commerce live stream.
certain language will have an issue, because for example, you can just have context basically. For example, certain sentences, for example, dvere sú otvorené a otvorené sú dvere. For example, in Slovak language, my home language, basically is that the door is open, and basically the same is just basically the same meaning.
And because it has visual context, it's also able to accurately translate the product specifications. Here's another example where having the visual context could be useful. For example, if someone is referring to muscle, maybe you know if they're referring to the shell muscle.
Most of the time we can say dvere sú otvorené.
Or a human muscle, right? But with this added visual context,
doors are open.
Then it's able to understand and translate everything a lot more correctly.
In certain situations, you don't know, you will have that issue.
To the top of the page, they have released a free demo for you to try this out. So this is via their online platform, and you can try this out for free. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In Humanoid Robot News, we have this new demo from Robot++. So they unveiled a magnetic wall-climbing industrial robot with humanoid dual arms. The video explicitly states that this robot uses a specialized wheeled magnetic
That's actually quite
suction that allows it to
in real usage for example in ships. That's impressive.
securely grip and drive smoothly across vertical or curved steel surfaces without slipping. The robot is shown to navigate the exterior of massive chemical storage tanks and driving along
chemical storage tanks. That's
the hulls of
impressive.
cargo ships. It's able to switch between different industrial tools such as welding or also grinding and surface prep. So here you can see it using rotating grinding discs to strip away rust and old paint and imperfections
And just
from surfaces. You can also equip it with a high-tech scanning laser or sensor for inspection. For example, you can use it to analyze the integrity of steel and weld points. And you can also get it to coat or spray paint evenly on large vertical ship hulls and tanks. Now, here we do see a human operator standing on the ground wearing this VR headset. So it looks like this thing is teleoperated.
It's teleoperated, so basically
this technology is impressive for several reasons. First of all, industrial maintenance on these high-risk environments like chemical tanks
is basically way too dangerous, and because you can just fall do a high risk of injury.
Or ship hulls or oil refineries usually requires human workers to operate at extreme heights or very hazardous conditions. But this robot removes the human from the loop. The human can just operate the robot from the ground using teleoperation. Now, wall-climbing robots aren't entirely new, but they're typically very lightweight inspection drones. This robot is a heavy-duty powerhouse. It can do so many things from like spray painting to like industrial welding, grinding, and high-pressure spraying, all while maintaining a flawless magnetic grip on the wall. It has already serviced over 10,000 ships, so it's a robust field-tested solution, not just a prototype concept. In other humanoid robot news, Hugging Face just released their open-source robot called the Robot Humanoid. This is an open-source 3D printed humanoid robot platform designed
so basically anyone can use this.
to make robotics cheaper and easier to experiment. They gave builders the full stack: the robot design, the parts list, assembly guide, wiring docs, simulation tools, training environments, and runtime software. So this takes affordable hardware and turns it into a complete robot learning playground. You can build a robot, simulate it, collect real-world data, and also train movement policies. The current version costs around $2,500 in parts, depending on sourcing and shipping, and it uses 3D printed parts, off-the-shelf components, and affordable electronics. Now, this is not meant to be a polished consumer robot. It's experimental hardware for researchers and builders who want to test humanoids and sim to real learning in a more accessible way. Hugging Face is making
So people just can just steal the
entire
data and just use the
open and reproducible. So you can modify the design, repair broken parts, improve the simulator, train new behaviors, and keep iterating. All the docs can be found on this page, so if you're interested in learning more, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week we have a new demo from Unitree Robotics. Now the Unitree is known to do some incredibly acrobatic stuff, like flips and kung fu and dancing, but this demo is a bit different. Here they're showing how you can actually use voice commands to directly control the G1 to do a wide range of actions autonomously in real time. For example, first the woman gets the robot to jump and plank, and it's able to handle this very well. And then she asks the robot to turn and do a hip wiggle, and then do a variety of different exercises like squatting. And finally, the demo ends with the woman instructing the robot to do a Gangnam-style dance and bow at the end. Now, this is impressive for several reasons. First of all, this video is just one continuous shot, so there are no cuts. The robot is able to process everything in real time with very low latency. And the voice commanding might not seem like much, but this is definitely the future of robotics, where we don't need to pre-program any actions inside it or teleoperate a robot. We can just instruct it on what to do.
We have basically voice command.
A voice command, and it should be able to go off and do it autonomously. Next up, this AI is pretty cool. It's called Cog Omni Control, and this is a system that allows you to control your video generation with multiple inputs. In fact, you can think of it as like a control net for video. For example, you can input a really rough sketch animation like this, which consists of just like 3 moving frames, plus a reference image, plus a text prompt, and it can generate a full video that follows exactly what was specified in the control sketch. Or here's another example where we can input this sketch animation plus a reference input, and here's our results. Or here's another example where we can input a rough sketch animation like this plus a reference image, and it can generate a video that follows exactly what we specified. Now, in addition to just a rough sketch, you can also input a pose skeleton animation like this plus a reference image of the character, and then for the prompt, let's get her to stand in front of a building surrounded by lush green plants and trees, and here's our final result. Note that it's able to follow both the control animation plus the reference character plus the background that was specified in the prompt. Or instead of a pose skeleton, we can also just input a line art animation like this plus a reference character and a text prompt, and here is what we get. So a super flexible tool that allows for multiple reference inputs to control your video. This is aimed at production workflows where creators can start with rough abstract inputs, but they need the video to stay faithful to the original creative direction.
And it can just basically just do it in the effective simple.
Now, if you scroll up here, it doesn't look like they've released the code or the models to this yet. They've only released a technical paper, but if you are interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, Meta releases a new model called Wave Flow. It's able to take a silent video and add appropriate audio and sound effects to it. So here are some examples. Note that the original video is silent, but after plugging it through this AI, here's what it sounds like.
Oh, it can basically do a sound in the rain sounds, actual sounds. Epic. Yes, it's got pretty good.
Modern audio models first compress audio into this latent space and generate everything inside this compressed space, and then it decodes it back into sound. This is to make compute more efficient. But Waveflow completely skips this middle step. It just takes the input for the audio generation and outputs the actual waveform directly without using any VAE or latent compression. And in theory,
so basically, it's a faster theory and less compute.
Should make the sound a lot cleaner and more realistic. Now, if you look at these benchmarks, it performs quite competitively against leading competitors like Audio. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, while they have released a GitHub repo, they have released some instructions on how to install this and run it, as well as a training script for this. However, here it says, due to organizational policy constraints, we're unable to release the full production trained checkpoints. So it seems like they're just giving you a nerfed version, which is pretty lame. But I'm not surprised at all since this is coming from Meta, which haven't really released anything since Llama. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is super useful for architecture, interior design, or real estate VR. So it's called Pano World, and this is a generative world model for creating full house 3D panorama tours. Instead of generating one nice room image at a time, it tries to generate an entire virtual home where the views stay consistent as you move around, from one viewpoint, look, and style of the building to something else. So you can iterate on different designs in 3D for a house.
And it can basically see you can see how it would look like in so far as world.
Like the panorama generation. Think of it as like visual memory. As it generates each node of the house tour, it updates that memory instead of rebuilding the scene from scratch. So the result is a system that can preserve consistency across the entire house. Now, at the top of the page, they haven't released any code or models to this yet, but it does say it's coming soon. So hopefully they will open source this in the near future. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Also this week, Stability AI, which is the company behind Stable Diffusion, just released Stable Audio 3. This is an open source model designed for making music. So you can create all types of different soundscapes, textures, effects, and other audio outputs just from a text prompt. Here are some examples.
Oh, we can basically just create an AI generated melodies.
On the specs of each model. Even the medium one is quite variant, which is currently not open source. You can only access it through their API. So here's a breakdown on the specs of each model. Even the medium one is quite small at only 1.4 billion parameters, and this can generate audio of up to 6 minutes and 20 seconds in length. Whereas for the small model, it can only generate a track of up to 2 minutes. There's also a small SFX version, which is great for creating sound effects. The awesome thing about this is they've also released documentation for LoRa training, so you can potentially fine-tune your own audio model based on a specific sound format. And it's also really good for audio inpainting, so you can take a section of a track and modify it, or maybe take a small snippet of audio and extend it further, or use that as a sound reference for a new track. If you're interested in downloading this, at the top here is the link to the Hugging Face repo, which contains all 3 open source models. The total size of the media model is only 10 gigabytes, so it should be able to fit on both consumer GPUs. And here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below.
So it's quite impressive.
Also this week, if you're in e-com or fashion, this AI might be very helpful for you. So it's called Fashion Chameleon by Alibaba, and this is basically a real-time virtual try-on, but for video. So this can take an image of your model plus different pieces of clothing, and it can stream a video of this person wearing all these different items in real time.
Basically, you can just choose how it would look in different clothing and basically for ads.
Get the character to wear different items at different moments in the video while their movement stays coherent. So this is super useful if you're like in fashion or live e-commerce, if you want to get a model to instantly switch between different outfits. The clever part is that Fashion Chameleon doesn't require a huge video dataset to train. It actually trains with just single garment video data, and then it uses in-context learning and also distillation and this training-free KV cache rescheduling trick to basically handle garment switching during generation. In simple terms, it basically learns how to keep the person and motion stable while swapping the clothing information at the right time. And here it says this can achieve almost 24 frames per second on just a single GPU. They claim that this
so basically is as a real live recording.
It's 30 to 180 times faster than existing baselines. Now, if you scroll to the top of the page, they have released a GitHub button to this, and here it says they are planning to release the code and model to this. So stay tuned for that. For now, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which...
It is quite impressive and quite terrifying, because you now have effectively various supermodels that can just create various generating videos, as well as the fact that there are now even more models that are basically specialized in their capabilities for lower price technically and faster output, or they're not for example for biology of humans with
tool are you most looking for?
With carbon. I didn't realize the name. It took me a while to get. Basically, with carbon, you basically have already this sort of AI already created, but now we have basically even slightly smaller and inferior, but it has basically a faster response time, and it's just basically impressive that we have basically a faster response and basically faster output, but with pretty much almost slightly inferior result. And the only thing that needs to happen is basically improving it itself to 30 billion, if I remember correctly. Yes, no, not 30 billion, 20 billion models. So basically it will be somewhere here with the 20 billion model. So basically it will be still more faster than any model, and it will be basically a win rate of basically up towards 90% or even higher to 100%. Basically, like if you choose 20 billion model parameter model at this stage. The only thing that matters more, in my opinion, is like Mega SMR will be extremely useful for basically recognizing sound and helpful for basically rewriting scenes for people who have issues with hearing. And 3D assets like Lito will be basically just to be able to create 3D models of basically from pictures of some things. It could be quite interesting for various use cases such as modeling or various outputs. And to be honest, such as Quantum's models such as for being effectively pretty much top tier, and as well the fact that they have their own translation method means that, to be honest, we are basically moving towards the case that we will basically have effectively a Memphis 2 level of computing, and basically with a complete pretty much access to it, and people will be using it. What matters most today? Well, how the people will use it, and because we already have robots that can respond to workers commands, we will basically from Unity we basically have answer that we already have basics of the fact that it can do this sort of nonsense. See, it can jump. It can do this sort of walk in crouch position. So it can do really close things like that. The only thing that it needs is basically the ability to be basically more independent, and the ability to basically have general more intelligence. You don't really even need to improve basically the movement of it. You just need to basically with just better software, because already hardware is almost pretty much there. The question is now most likely improve hardware. Of course you can just improve the hardware, but software will be the key of capability towards basically AI robots in the future. So that's my honest opinion. Comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell, or the enter, so press the my number. This is my reaction to AI searches video about AI scientists, data editors, AI NPCs, new Quen, and open source robots. And what are the open source robots? And that was, to be exact, Larobot. This one, just previous one. They just released it for $2,500 in parts. So pretty much anyone who has a little bit of money, oh well, some money, can use it and just pretty much free print it off the shell components and some electronics. So basically, it's basically a full stack of hardware, software, and runtime, as well as the tools and training environments. So basically, they already they released their own training environments to the public. They basically can just basically be replicated and basically just credited people will be able to create better models from this. This is just a test bed to be an age. But this is the inevitability seems to be that AI is basically improving in capability in various cases, and the only thing that we are missing is to basically the ability to basically to acknowledge that we already are basically on the verge of necessary of UBI systems, some form of UBI system. That's my honest opinion. So comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell. This was igorkodurman. Ciao, peeps.